going on?
I would like you to stop my heart. You give it 1 minute, and then you bring me back.
Okay, now's the point where you say it's all a joke.
Flatliners is a remake of a movie that came out in 1990 and starred Kiefer Sutherland, Kevin Bacon, and Julia Roberts. A lot of people thought that this was going to be a sequel to that movie, but it's actually a remake. I know this movie already came out a week ago, but we didn't get a chance to see it last week, and we saw all these reviews that were coming out saying that it was an awful movie. So we wanted to go see it and just see if it was as bad as the review said it was. And I gotta say, I'm sort of so-and-so on how I feel about it. It wasn't necessarily an awful, truly terrible movie, but at the same time, it was definitely far from being a good movie. This film stars Ellen Page and Diego Luna, as well as a cameo from Kiefer Sutherland, but he does play a different role in this one than he did in the original one in 1990. And it's about a group of 5 medical students who all realize if they make their heart stop and flatline and then resuscitate themselves, they're able to have sort of an enlightenment and greatly enhance their knowledge. But they soon start to realize that in doing so, there are some horrific side effects. Now guys, I want to start off by saying that I do love this concept. Although I can't really say it's a huge strength for it, considering it is a remake of an older film. But, you know, a concept is definitely a good place to start for any movie. Although, at the same time, I do think that they did not do this concept justice. Let's talk about the beginning. From the very start, I mean, there is a scene at the very beginning, but it was only like a 2-minute long scene. But I'm talking about, like, directly after that. There is probably one of the cheapest opening credits I've ever seen, and it just didn't feel like it was in an actual movie that I was watching in a movie theater because of how cheap it looked. And then we start getting introduced to the main characters for this movie, which sort of leads us to the acting. The acting, I felt there's probably only one actress I can tell you that was really horrible, and that was Kiersey Clemons, which I just looked up pretty recently, and she's gonna be playing Iris West in the Justice League movie and the Flash solo movie, which I'm not too happy about because after seeing this movie, she was just, every line that she said just was portrayed just horribly. But then besides her, the rest of the cast was just, you know, decent. There was another actor, James Norton, who did have some scenes where he seemed like he was a good actor, but then other times he was completely horrible. So he kept switching back and forth, which was sort of confusing. And then you have Ellen Page and Diego Luna, who both did probably the best acting in this movie. But even they weren't super great performances. So then as the movie progresses, we see that they're medical students. They're sort of learning to be doctors. And to be honest, I found myself multiple times during the first like 30 minutes of this movie just feeling these sort of sci-fi channel moments where it felt like it didn't feel very professional. It felt sort of amateurish, which I'm not saying all amateur movies are horrible, but it didn't feel like a professional movie that was being made for a major company. Which leads us to the directing. The director for this movie, Niels Arden Oplov, also directed The Girl with a Dragon Tattoo, which was critically acclaimed. But this one, Flatliners, it just didn't feel like it was very well directed. Like I said, at times it didn't feel professional. Like a lot of times, especially at the beginning of the movie, there were conversations, and it just felt weirdly quiet. Not in a good way either. It felt like they didn't know how to make it sound natural for audiences watching it. And it sort of felt awkward at times to be watching it, to be honest. Which sort of goes back to the acting that I was talking about earlier. It could have stemmed from the directing because some of the lines that they delivered just didn't feel right. And it could have been the way that the director told them to say them. And then some of the music choices that they had were just some of the most generic music I've ever heard in a movie. It felt like they found some stock music for free on the internet that anybody can find and just threw it into the movie because it just didn't feel like it was an originally composed score for this film. And this brings us to around the middle of the movie where they decide to do a very strange decision with one of the characters, which I'm not going to say because this is a spoiler for your review, but it happened. I'm just like wondering why they decided to go with that, but I guess you'll see it if you ever see it. And I've seen a lot of people who said the first half of the movie was their favorite part, but I feel sort of the opposite because I felt like the beginning was just not well directed and just didn't really flow well like it should have. And then there were the horror elements to this movie, which a lot of people didn't like. They were confused. But, especially after seeing the trailer, I was expecting it to happen. So I honestly didn't mind the horror aspects to this movie. Sure, they could have done it a lot better. Sure, they could have thrown in so many jump scares, which there were a lot of jump scares in the last half of this movie. So just be ready for that if you see it. Especially there are certain scenes where it was creepy enough to where they could have just left it alone, but they decided to throw in just a random jump scare that was completely unnecessary because the scene was creepy enough and it just felt like it was just like lazy. And one big thing that I can complain about it was that they didn't really give us a straight resolution on what exactly was going on, and it wasn't one of those things where it's like, oh, it's open for interpretation. They sort of tried to explain what it was, but at the same time, they didn't. The fine details weren't really explained at all, and those fine details were pretty big to the overall story. And this movie is almost 2 hours long, and it definitely felt like it until the very end. It felt like they didn't have a clue on how to end it, so they wrote some crappy ending to try to explain everything, and they just fast forward right through it. And guys, I definitely think it deserved a lot of the hate that it got, but I don't think it deserved all of it because, I didn't think that it was like a horrible, horrible film, especially when you got Emoji Movie that came out a few months ago to compare it to. But, it definitely was not a well put together movie. So I'm going to say that Flatliners is 45% awesome. Alright guys, if you've seen the new Flatliners, let me know down below if it was just as bad as you were expecting or if it was better than you're expecting. Just let me know, and don't forget you can always subscribe by clicking the button right here. And you can follow us on social media. We have Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all at 2awesomemen. Thanks for watching, and as always, you will see us later.